Imagine it's 1955 and you're working away to keep up with your house. This wasn't just about cleaning, this was about creating the ideal family home and the revolutionary systems to maintain it. Hey, I'm Robyn. I'm a retired yarners and I'm obsessed with different culture cleaning routines for creating a healthy and happy home. And today we're diving deep into the 1950s housewives cleaning system. And before I get to the daily cleaning routine, let's quickly talk about the aesthetic that we've all seen that define this era. Now, the 1950s look was all about polished perfection. The women wore house dresses even for cleaning, and they weren't just like their casual clothes, but actual dresses with fitted bodices, full skirts, and even proper undergarments, including girdles and those structured bras that look intense. Now, over this went a decorative apron, often with ruffles or embroidered details, nothing like my plain apron right now. They also probably wore beautiful pearls instead of a necklace like this. They wore girdles to clean, and I'm here in leggings every single day. Anyway, their hair was set in pin curls every single night and brushed out into soft waves or victory rolls each morning. Makeup was never skipped. Red lipstick, defined eyebrows, and a polished look that was considered essential even for housework. And the idea was that you never knew who would stop by, so you always wanted to be put together. You were probably really happy when somebody stopped by, honestly. The homes themselves had linoleum floors in cheerful patterns, chrome appliances that gleamed, gingham curtains, and everything in its designated place. Also, think about the colors. They were bright and optimistic. Turquoise, pink, yellow, mint green dominated kitchens and bathrooms. Even cleaning supplies were designated to look attractive sitting on the counters. And now we often hide ours under the sink. So there you go. It's like we're ashamed to admit we own Windex, but for them it was like decor. This wasn't about vanity either. It was about taking pride in your role and your space, and the visual standard matched their cleaning standard. Everything should look as good as it functioned. Let's talk about that daily cleaning routine. And this is the secret sauce of the 1950s housewives, because she would clean daily. But it was maintenance cleaning and not deep cleaning, which is a theme here on this channel. The morning routine was the foundations of everything. So in the morning, of course, she would rise before everybody and she would start that coffee. It would be percolating, and as every family member would come into the kitchen, they'd smell that amazing aroma that we all remember so fondly. She'd feed her husband his breakfast, and then she'd send him off to work to the city. And then the children, she would make sure they had their breakfast and get ready for school before they left for school. And usually they would just walk to school. But then came the immediate kitchen cleanup. She would be washing the dishes. She would clean up the coffee maker, get rid of the coffee grounds. She'd be wiping the counters, emptying the garbage, and everything would be put back where it belongs. Then she'd head to the bedrooms. She would make sure that the beds were made, the curtains were open nice and wide, and PJs were put away. She then would start her daily laundry before most of us were even awake for the day. Now, the laundry I'm gonna get to when I get to the weekly routine, and you are going to love it. But one of the things you might not know is that they cleaned certain things constantly throughout the day. So ashtrays needed to be empty because everybody smoked everywhere. They actually thought it was healthy, which is really tragic, as we know, but they would smoke in homes, cars, restaurants, hospitals, planes, airports. She would then dust and polish the furniture, straighten any magazines or books. She'd fluff the pillows, and of course, it was time to clean the floors. So they would do a daily sweeping, and then she would do some mopping, and then a weekly deep cleaning and waxing. And all of those shiny chrome appliance accents, they would need to be polished. I need to quickly tell you, I have been in some really cool 1950s kitchens. You let me know if you have too. Back in the early 1980s was when I was a little kid. We would go and visit my grandpa's house in Calgary, Alberta, and he had built that house in the early 1950s. So it was literally like a lot of what I have described so far. And the appliances were really cool. They were old. It was like to open the fridge, you had to like pull the handle and it unlatched inside, and you'd pull it open and it was big and beautiful. And the stove was really cool. It was just really neat writing this video to think back to that house and all of the really old-fashioned things that existed back then. Anyway, so the windows in houses were also cleaned regularly because natural light was everything. And I'm over here saying, yeah, it still is to me. I love it too. But also, curtains absorbed smoke and cooking odors, so they needed frequent attention. Plus, refrigerators did require more maintenance than your modern ones. You had to defrost them regularly, but I don't know, because a lot of modern ones come with some drama. But I can tell you, I have spent a lot of money repairing appliances lately with their annoying circuit boards that are breaking, which really annoys me. So would anybody else love a washing machine, a dishwasher, or a fridge that has no computers or circuit boards? Just good old technology? Anyone? Just me? Okay. Anyway, porches and entryways also got special attention because first impressions were really important. I cannot tell you how important a woman's house was to her pride. Also, their daily cleaning routine was honestly more thorough than most people's spring cleaning today. Now, before I get to the weekly routine, here's what nobody tells you about why the 1950s housewife system is so fondly remembered and romanticized. Now, North America, mostly the US and Canada, were experiencing a booming post-war economy with a rising middle class and suburban expansion. So the baby boom was in full swing, home ownership increased dramatically, and there was this optimism everywhere, including consumerism optimism. Now, the future is here was the mentality that they had. People were buying cars, appliances, furniture, and convenience products. There was this great feeling of prosperity and progress that shaped everything about how families lived. Now, a quick aside here is that, yes, in the 1950s, the US and Canada, it was great, unprecedented prosperity. But other parts of the world weren't experiencing this same boom. So the UK and Europe, for example, their recovery from World War II was extensive. So for this video, I'm really just focusing on North America, but I will definitely be doing a video about cleaning routines in the different countries of Europe later for the 1950s as well. But families moved into brand new developments in the suburbs with homes averaging 1,200 square feet, which was a massive jump from the typical 800 to 900 square foot homes in the 1920s and the 30s, and like really honestly history all the way back. But here's the kicker. They now had separate rooms for different functions. No more one room living. These homes had modern kitchens with built-in cabinets. They had dedicated laundry areas, lawns that needed maintenance, garages for storage, and picture windows, which of course meant more glass to clean. But again, we're team natural light over here. So in my opinion, worth it for the extra cleaning. But here's what's pretty interesting for those of us on this channel. The suburban boom actually invented modern clutter. Suddenly homes had space to fill, and families, they filled that space with enthusiasm. It's exactly like when you get a bigger purse, and somehow it always ends up completely full in a week, no matter how big it is. But they still are very handy for going to the movies, aren't they? Anyway, then there was the appliance revolution. This change was massive. Before the 1950s, homemaking was much more physical labor. But by the 1950s, middle-class homes finally had electric everything, transforming housework from survival labor to systems management. Obviously, housework is still hard work, but nothing like before the 1950s. Before that revolution, women were heating water on the stove. They were scrubbing clothes by hand and with like those washer things. There were other kind of manual washing machines. They were also beating rugs outside. But after the appliance boom, they had electric washing machines. They had vacuum cleaners, they had refrigerators and mixers that changed everything about how homes functioned. Before mixers, it was a very buff arm from beating those cake batters by hand. Plus, there was the consumer culture explosion. Companies aggressively were marketing everything that you could imagine. Cleaners, gadgets, decor, convenience foods, plastics, paper products. Women were told that a good wife keeps a beautiful home, and the home becomes deeply tied to identity and social status, which maybe isn't happy for everybody. Also, relaxation time changed too, with TVs becoming the center of the home. Furniture was literally arranged around it, and many of us have carried that forward today as I look over my shoulder at my TV. Oh my gosh, my pantry's open. I'm gonna close it. showing idealized homes, perfect wives, and spotless kitchens. So this created both pressure and aspiration. And TV ads basically convinced women that their neighbors were judging them through the windows like some kind of suburban judgment tea coffee club. Okay, are you ready for this? The weekly cleaning routine. The 1950s had assigned cleaning days, so each day had a purpose and they weren't like, what should I be doing? Now, Monday was wash day for most households across many eras of time. But of course, some women prefer Tuesday or Wednesday based on their schedule. But from what I'm finding, Monday was wash day. So for those who followed this traditional schedule, they would, by 8 a.m., their laundry, they would be starting it. So they would often start with their whites first. Now, this wasn't just tradition. And it was tradition, but it was also practical because the cleanest, hottest water went with the items that needed to stay bright white. And depending on your machine and your house and the hot water, that's why they did this first. Then would come the lighter colored things, your pastels, and we know there were many pastel things, followed by the darker items, and finally, those heavily soiled work clothes and cleaning rags. Now, the washing technology of the 1950s was revolutionary compared to the past. Many families finally had electric washing machines, though plenty did still use the wringer washers where you fed the clothes through the rollers to squeeze out the water. And I almost think there might have been one of those in my grandpa's basement, but I can't quite remember. I think it was because I remember it being slightly soft. Anyway, but you know those automatic washers that filled, washed, and drained themselves? Those were the status symbol that every woman wanted. Though they were expensive and not every home had them, but automatic washers were a status symbol. And it was like having the latest iPhone, except that it actually like made your life easier because social media didn't exist yet to make you feel bad about yourself. Anyway, regardless of machines, clothes had to be sorted carefully. Stains would be pre-treated with soap or special solutions, and I am so lazy, I do never pre-treat things. Okay. Delicate items were handled separately too. And drying was its own art form. Clothes would go from outdoor lines where a lot of people still like to dry things outside, but some people did have dryers. If you didn't have a dryer though, you would use an indoor drying rack, which you would pull out during bad weather. But the goal with all of this drying was that you wanted everything dry and ready for Tuesday's ironing marathon. Which brings us to Tuesday. So that meant drying literally everything, including underwear, sheets, handkerchiefs. The 1950s aesthetic was one of crisp, pressed perfection. They ironed underwear. Underwear. I am literally hard pressed to iron something before like going to a wedding or a big event. Anyway, another interesting thing that they did that I have never done is, as I mentioned the chrome before, they might actually get really in there. Instead of just polishing it, they might get in there and clean it. Their fridges, their stoves, their toasters, their mixers, it all had to gleam. And then there's Wednesday, which was mending and sewing day. This is sort of like the bridge between the Depression era make do and the emerging buy new culture, which you know, like they loved creating clutter. But despite that rising consumerism, women still repaired a lot of stuff. They would darn socks, they would patch clothes, and they would alter garments for growing children. But this is interesting because this is also when TV started becoming much more common and influencing their daily life. So they might be mending while watching afternoon programs, and TV advertising, of course, was creating new desires for products and lifestyle standards. And they were probably doing this when they were ironing on Tuesday also, because ironing took all day. But yes, soap operas were also becoming popular during this time. Shows like Guiding Light and As the World Turns, which stayed on for decades after that, which really was great because it did give women that entertainment during their household tasks. Like for me, I'm usually like have my AirPods in and I am just like working away, listen to a podcast or something. And all of that repairing, they were so good at it. They would darn a sock so well that it looked better than when it was new. And right now, people will just jump on Amazon and order another dozen. Wednesday was also when women would tackle the small household repairs. They would organize their drawers and their closets, and they would refresh their decorative elements, like maybe their flowers, they would arrange them or get fresh flowers. And maybe if they had seasonal decor, they would adjust it and just make sure it just looks so good. This was also when they would tackle tasks like washing lampshades, cleaning the telephone receivers, and organizing the medicine cabinets. Now, that's another thing I can remember about how the medicine cabinet smelled. Let me know if you can remember that. The detailed work that keeps homes functioning. It is so funny, as somebody who grew up in the 80s and the 90s, to romantically look back on things like telephone receivers. Who knew that my phone in 2006 would actually be helping me record a video? Meanwhile, when I was a kid, I was like happily like unscrewing the telephone receiver to be like, wow, look, it comes apart. Okay, I digress. Let's get to Thursday, which was shopping day and deep kitchen cleaning day, when housewives became strategic meal planners and kitchen scientists. So those suburban kitchens, they had built-in cabinets and countertops. They had linoleum flooring that was easy to clean, and those new fancy appliances and dedicated spaces for their food prep. Now, their standard appliances did include refrigerators, as I mentioned, which meant goodbye to ice boxes. And my grandma has told me about the ice boxes that she had living in Saskatchewan. In their winters they did not always need the ice boxes, but they also had electric stoves and ovens and mixers from KitchenAid and Sunbeam, and toasters and coffee percolators and early dishwashers, but those were super duper rare and very expensive. But they also had convenience food, which really started exploring during that time. And you have probably seen some of, okay, so first of all, they did have TV dinners, which is the TV stands. Again, I keep going back to my grandpa's house, but he had the TV stands and we would use those. But they also had some very interesting recipes: Jell-O salads and molded everything. Canned soup casseroles, some of which I have a tuna casserole recipe today that uses some canned soup. They had processed food and frozen food. This was considered modern and progressive. People were genuinely proud of their convenience technology, and I can honestly understand that. Friday was floors and polishing day, and waxing floors was an art form of itself. I have never waxed a floor. Anyway, linoleum floors were standard in suburban homes, and the floor care routine was intense. So of course, this is when they're doing a deep clean, unlike the maintenance clean of the rest of the week. So they'd sweep it thoroughly, maybe they'd use their vacuum cleaner, and they would wash with the appropriate cleaner most days. Maybe it was like Lysol or something like that. But Fridays is when they would apply the wax and they would polish it to shine and buff it to perfection. Popular products were Johnson & Johnson's wax or Mop and Glow or other various paste waxes. Other Friday tasks include furniture polishing, silver polishing, since everyone had silver, chrome appliance cleaning, and window washing, because natural light was crucial. But Friday was really about making everything in the home shine and sparkle, and this was the day for furniture polishing. We're talking about real wood furniture that regularly required care to maintain its beauty. Coffee dining room sets, coffee tables, end tables, bedroom dressers, all got the full treatment with the quality furniture polish and soft cloths. Plus, silver polishing was their major Friday task, since most families had silver serving pieces, flatware, and decorative items. This was not just about special occasions. Silver was part of everyday life and needed regular maintenance to prevent tarnishing. Women would lay out newspaper, bring out that silver polish, and carefully work through each piece. And I think the reason why they did so much on Friday was because of Saturday, which was social preparation day. It was a baking day and they would prepare to entertain. So when housewives became pastry chefs and party planners, the suburban social scene included dinner parties, bridge clubs, those coffee clutches I talked about, cocktail parties, and backyard barbecues, and church socials and community events. They could whip up a 3-layer cake while wearing heels and pearls. And of course, this seems like a superpower to me because I'm standing here in Birkenstocks that I wear, my inside house Birkenstocks. But maybe their heels were more comfortable back then, or maybe they just couldn't feel their feet. You tell me. Now that takes us to Sunday, which was the rest day. It had routines, there was church, For a lot of people, there was family dinner and, of course, a little bit of light maintenance. Now, the family dynamics on Sunday were very clear. Dad would work on the household projects, the yard, car maintenance, and relaxed with the paper. Mom, she would prepare an elaborate Sunday dinner and coordinated family activities. Children, they would wear their church clothes to church, and then afterwards they would probably put their play clothes back on. But apparently play was sort of limited. They were meant to be a bit more formal. So I don't know. I think it depends on the family. But the Sunday dinner production was the week's showcase meal. So they would have a roast, there would be delicious vegetables, dessert, the works. And it really showed the wife's skill and the family's prosperity because they wanted people to know if they were prosperous. Here's what's revolutionary though, and I love this. The 1950s housewives were actually encouraged to rest and to take time for themselves. They had built-in rest periods throughout their days and weeks. They would have a morning break after maybe washing the floor, plus there was afternoon rest that would come after lunch cleanup, before children came home from school. And then came the evening beauty routine. It was not vanity, well, maybe not that much vanity. It was structured self-care. Every night they would put on cold cream, they would put pin curls in and hair nets, and they looked fabulous before they went to bed. This was their dedicated time for themselves. But they also had really cool support systems. Neighborhood networks meant women helped each other with childcare and emergencies, which is very handy. And I do remember running to the neighbor's house behind my grandpa's house where my mom would be chatting with Mrs. Gaelic, even though it was the 1980s. Mrs. Gaelic was from 1950s. They also had formal social groups like bridge clubs, church circles, and community organizations provided regular connection. And they had phone networks, finally, that allowed for a long conversation while doing your household tasks, which I used to do a lot more. And I guess I'm just more into my screens now, which is kind of sad. Now, I mentioned their beauty routine. They also had more structured rest time than modern people did with their vacation time. They had coffee clatches, which was basically the original support group, except with better coffee and way more neighborhood gossip, a bunch of ladies hanging out together. But one thing I do want to say is I want to stress that these routines were not universal. Many women had different lifestyle strengths, different cultures, different challenges. But my hope with these videos is to help encourage you and me to enjoy caring for our homes ourselves and our families, to be inspired by a couple of neat little tricks here and there that we can adopt. But let's talk real quick about the emotional reality. What we romanticize versus what was real. So the positives include strong, predictable routines that prevented chaos, clear expectations, and defined roles, plus community support and social connections. Also, valuable homemaking skills that were passed down through generations. Also, something that is missing for a lot of people, but not everybody, is regular family meals and structured family time. And genuine pride in homemaking as important work, which is what I'm trying to bring back here on this channel. But the challenges were real too. There was intense social pressure and judgment, which a lot of us actually still feel today, real or just imagined with social media absolutely everywhere. I don't know. There were also limited options for women's career and independence, and I love how far we've come for that. But there was also perfectionism, expectations, isolation for women who just didn't fit the mold. Plus, there were mental health issues that were often ignored and stigmatized. What people miss most today, though, I think it really includes the sense of community and neighborhood connections, a slower pace with less overscheduling, pride in homemaking skills, family dinner traditions, and clear routines that actually prevented decision fatigue. Here's what we can learn today. The systems that still work, they include the daily maintenance that prevents big problems from stacking up. Also, specific days for specific tasks, it's so handy. And people like Fly Lady have developed routines like that too. And that eliminates that decision fatigue for those of us who just get kind of stuck. I love morning routines that set the tone for the day. And I think we definitely need to get back to community support and neighbor connections, which is what we do in my membership, The Mighty Circle. You can look at that below because I think community has been lost for a lot of us. I also think it's great to take pride in homemaking as valuable work and built-in rest and self-care. What we should leave behind would be perfectionism. And I don't actually think that's just a 1950s thing. I think that that is of the devil, because I think that it is impossible for anybody to be perfect. And I think that anytime we strive for that, we're just setting ourselves up for failure. But also, I think that maybe it's nice that we don't have that sort of constant performance expectations. I don't rush and put like makeup on before my husband gets home. I basically put makeup on to make videos. But I also think modern adaptations might include assigning specific tasks to those days, as I said. And I think like getting your family involved is really helpful. But also, what I really like is designated rest days. I like to do a Sabbath day basically on Saturday, where I do not do any work that I don't want to do. So I will often, like, I love cooking and baking and gardening and whatever, but I'm not doing things that feel like work to me. So we can take these systems though, and we can leave the outdated expectations. The goal is to get efficiency without the requirement that you have to do it all in heels and pearls. What I love most about this is the sustainable energy creating approach that they actually did have back in the 1950s. But do you know who managed to create beauty in the space of unimaginable struggle? That was the women during the Great Depression. They had to keep spotless homes with literally nothing. They would be making soap from kitchen scraps, creating weekly cleaning schedules so efficient that they'd make modern productivity experts weep. These weren't just cleaning tips, they were survival systems that kept families healthy and homes beautiful when everything else was falling apart. You can watch that here. I hope something great happens for you today. Please like, subscribe, and give us a hype. Stay tidy and mighty. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.